Hey everybody, this is Peter Bowman. Welcome you to the Surly Grognards for November 21st, 2011. I'm joined here by my good friend and co-host, Jesse Thomas.
Hello everybody.
This is going to be interesting. We
don't know what this is yet.
No, we don't really.
We're making this up as we go along.
In theory,
that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
It's a good story. The theory is we're doing a gaming show, talking about tabletop gaming primarily. But, oh, dear Lord. And my connection hiccup there.
So it did. But you're back now.
I'm back now.
Everything is fine.
Nothing is ruined. Am I recording?
Down, Joe.
At any rate, growing pains are to be expected. At any rate, so today we're going to talk about, at least briefly, before we very likely digress into other topics, knowing us, we're going to talk about dungeon crawls.
That's our theme.
That is our theme for this week. The reason this is, Jesse pointed out, is that the two of us are playing in a D&D game with a couple of other friends, which is being run by a friend of ours who is running actually Keep on the Borderlands, which is one of the first adventures ever published for Dungeons & Dragons.
And one which, mysteriously, I'd never played before, despite the fact that I've been playing D&D since 1983.
I barely beat Jesse out there. I've been playing since 81. But, actually, we actually should probably do a little intro about ourselves, since...
Okay.
I'll go first. As I mentioned, my name's Peter Bowman. I've been playing tabletop games since I started playing Dungeons & Dragons in 1981, where I was given a copy of the Red Box for my birthday, I believe. It's either that or Christmas. It's been a while. I primarily Game Master games. I like playing when I get the chance. I play a mixture of, tabletop role-playing games, war games, and CCGs.
Okay, then. My name's Jesse Thomas. I am roughly the same age as Peter. I have been playing tabletop role-playing games for going on 30 years now. My first role-playing game was Redbox D&D, which was bought for me as a Christmas present, I believe. My first video game was Pong.
Ooh.
Yeah. My first CCG was Magic.
Same here.
My first deck consisted of 4 alpha booster packs. And these days, I am mostly a player of role-playing games. My preferred system is the Hero system. But as Peter mentioned, I'm in a second edition AD&D game using a basic D&D module, which makes perfect sense.
Yep. Yeah, like Jesse, I'm also quite a fan of the Hero system. I'm not as...
You're not as monomaniacal about it as I am.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I like it a lot. It's one of my favorite systems. Since I run things, I run games mostly, I do tend to play a lot of different systems. Right now, I'm running a GURPS sci-fi game with my Tuesday night group. I'm running a Feng Shui game online with some people who are watching us, hopefully. I know Z Caliber is one of my players. Hello.
There you go.
So yes, so that's where...
who was it who introduced you to Feng Shui?
That'd be you. That'd be you and, I believe Tox, our mutual sort of acquaintance, I guess, or like Tox, mentioned it to me, but I never actually tried it until I actually started hanging out with you.
I think I was the one who actually already owns the book.
That is correct. You're also the one who got me into the Shout Out to CCG.
That too.
You devil.
Well, I've quit playing it.
Yeah, well, I haven't played in a while, so. And looks like the new set's not going to be coming out, but we digress. Yeah, we met back in, 97?
Must have been. I moved to Boston in 96, so it was right around then.
Yeah. Yeah, we met at one of our local game stores, which is no longer in business as a game store. The guy who owns it does have his own game company now, though.
That's true.
That'd be, so yeah. At any rate, dungeon crawls.
Dungeon crawls.
Oh boy. Here's where our lack of preparation bites us in the ass, but hey, whatever, we'll go with it. At any rate, Yeah, I mean, primarily I think we wanted to start off talking about sort of, the strengths and weaknesses of a dungeon crawl campaign.
Right.
Speaking as a DM, the nice thing about it is that it is pretty well self-contained. It means that, the players don't... It's less likely the players are going to do something that will completely throw you off your game.
Like murder the campaign in session 1.
That's happened to me. Well, it was the adventures, but whatever. The first plot arc. Thank you, Matt.
Well, it is his specialty.
It really is. He's quite good at that sort of thing. So that's a big advantage is that, you've got it's very linear, which is both its strength and its probably greatest weakness.
Yeah, as a player, you pretty much have to buy into the dungeon crawl ethos in order for it to be any good at all. It is very good, for the beer and pretzels style of roleplay. And if you go back far enough, as we do, it's a very comforting sort of feeling, just to know that you only have to go one place and do one thing, which is kill lots and lots of orcs.
Yep. That is true, actually. Did my stream go down?
Your computer,
my stream
no.
It bounced briefly, but whatever.
Yeah.
We'll soldier on. But anyways, yeah, it actually has been kind of, fun in a weird sort of way playing second edition AD&D in this remarkably, obviously, first basic D&D module.
Yeah, it is interesting, and to be fair, our DM Peter is going out of his way to rationalize the setting a bit. I mean, he is actually creating a plot out of a bunch of disparate modules.
Honestly,
have nothing to do with each other.
I'm astonished that I've read the module. I mean, I had it. I've never run it actually, mostly because I remember reading it when I got the game and saying, "But there's no story here. Why would I do this?"
And Peter has crafted a story out of nothing.
Yeah, I was not that. At the age of 8, I was not that skilled.
No.
Scraping noise.
Oh, sorry. I was cleaning a bit of schmutz off the mic. Entirely my fault.
No problem. At any rate, he's done a remarkable job so far, given the remarkably limited resources he has to go with in that book.
Yep. And I think he is tying in, foreshadowing for future modules.
I believe he is. But so as I said, the biggest advantage, as I said, for the dungeon crawl is that, you've got this dungeon, which is basically, if the players buy into it or are going to go explore the dungeon,
right,
is the bounds of what they can do during that adventure.
Yes. It's hard to go off the rails.
I mean, I've met players who've tried damn hard, but...
Yeah. But, if you say, okay, you wander off into the wilderness and there's a bunch of trees there, now what do you do?
Yeah. Basically, the big thing, the big way that people can theoretically go off the rails on a dungeon crawl is to basically say, but I don't want to go into the dungeon. That's stupid.
Yeah. And, there is something to be said for that. I mean, there are different types of gamers. I think we've all, well, maybe we haven't, but I'm familiar with the now completely blanking on it, GSN theory.
Yep. Gamist, simulationist, mechanical, or mechanist.
Narrativist.
Narrative. That's GSN, right. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I'm a simulationist at heart. I like role-playing games for their ability to model the world and people's interactions. It's a way of sort of like looking at things from a different angle.
Yeah.
And, but there are people for whom the story is everything. And if the story is you go into a hole in the ground and kill a bunch of orcs, some people aren't going to be too happy with that.
Yeah.
Which is where you get the approach that Peter has taken, which is, building a story into it.
Indeed.
I know I've told you about this in the past, Peter, though I don't know if you remember it. I have been toying with a setting for Fantasy Hero, which would basically build the concept of the dungeon crawl into the society in which your players live. Like, there is an actual place where people go. It's basically, it's the gold rush with dungeons instead of mines.
I do remember you mentioning this briefly at one point.
Yeah, I got the idea from a Glenn Cook novel, and I mashed up with all the other stuff in my head, and came up with a setting where, a long time ago there was a highly advanced technomagical society. The various wizard guilds got into a giant war and killed each other off, and the entire society was destroyed. And 1,000 years later, people sort of like wandering into exploring the wilderness discover the big city full of like all these towers and stuff, and they're all guarded by magical traps and stuff, because that's what the wizards were doing at the time. They were trying to invade each other's towers. So then suddenly you have an explanation for like why everything is trapped and why are there all these crazy monsters living in the same place.
A wizard did it.
A wizard did it.
Yes. That's definitely an interesting campaign idea.
Yeah. But as you know, I'll never run it.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesse's actually remarkably good at coming up with campaign concepts, but I believe, as you said, you're just not really interested in running things in general.
I don't think I'm very good at it, and the fact that I don't think I'm very good at it makes me hesitant to try, and so I never do become good at it.
Right.
That's the vicious cycle.
Yep. Whereas I've been doing this on and off for pretty much my entire time I've been gaming, so I don't know. I foolishly was one of the people who said, "Sure, I'll be the dungeon master."
Yep.
Little did I know that resigned me to
That's what your fate decided.
Yeah.
Once you set foot on that dark path, forever so will your destiny.
Well, I am evil.
Well, aren't we all?
To varying degrees, yes. But yeah, I definitely think it's an interesting way of actually approaching a dungeon crawl environment where you're actually giving sort of a bit of story to the narrativists who would want that, and and honestly the game would still be happy. I mean,
yes, because it's
as long as the game itself plays well.
Well, yeah, you're overcoming obstacles and scoring points in the form of finding loot, that sort of thing.
Yep.
It is, yeah, I mean, the dungeon crawl really is very much a game sort of approach.
Yep.
And I have found that a bit frustrating in the current campaign that we're in.
Yeah.
I mean, though I think the most frustrating thing is a particular member of our group who
we will leave him.
I believe you know who I'm talking about.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Who is a very dear friend of mine, and I love him to pieces, and he drives me mad.
Yeah. He is defensively minded, shall we say.
I would go so far as to say hyper cautious.
Yeah. Let me just say this, it is monumentally frustrating from the GM side of the screen sometimes.
Yes. Well, as frustrating as it can be for the GM, it can also be very, very difficult for the other players. Like, look, there's probably only one room left on this level of the dungeon. Can we just explore it before we go running back to the
I remember that, yes.
Yes.
Oy, oy, oy. Funny thing is, he actually is a pretty good GM. The Star Wars game he ran actually was pretty damn good.
Yeah, well, I guess there his propensity for almost comical over preparation actually is an advantage.
Yeah.
And to be fair, my plan of simply forging ahead did manage to get my character killed a couple sessions ago.
This is true. Your Elven Fighter Mage did end up on the wrong end of the Bugbear Chieftain's sword. Or was it an axe? I forget.
I think it was an axe.
It was bad either way.
But he took my sword.
Yeah.
And we have to get that thing back.
Yep. Well, we'll get him at some point.
We'll get him eventually.
Yep.
And the thing is, I'm not 100% convinced that we couldn't have taken that guy.
I think we probably could have. But Joey was already fleeing? Well, actually,
Yes.
the problem was I was unconscious.
Yeah, that was bad.
So we were down to just the other partial cleric.
That was the big problem with that particular iteration of the group, is that we only had one tank, and we only had one healer, and they were the same guy.
Yeah. That's the problem. I'm so glad your fighter is there, Jesse. You have no idea.
Yes. Well, you'll be even gladder, and so will I, when I get some decent armor.
Yeah. Listen, I'll probably loan you the shield at some point.
Yeah. Well, our listeners don't care about that.
No, they don't really. But yeah, so that's sort of, I mean, there isn't really a lot to talk about Dungeon. Well, there probably is more to talk about Dungeon Crawls. I mean,
yeah, I mean, well, there's the historical aspect. I mean, it rises out of the wargaming aspect of the hobby.
Yep.
And that gets a lot of bad press, and I think that's unfortunate in a lot of ways.
I do too.
There's a lot to be said for that approach. I mean, it's about problem solving and teamwork, and a lot of the advantages that are built into role playing as a hobby do arise from that sort of play.
I agree completely. Yeah, I mean, the big thing there is, I mean, it's not. It's the other thing is that one of my long running stances is that honestly, when it comes down to it, you can basically role play with any system.
Yes.
So in any environment, and you can extrapolate that to any environment, really. I mean,
yeah.
So I mean, if you're actually a hardcore role player, you should be able to find a way to role play in a dungeon crawl.
Yes, and we've done that. I have played. Well, I've told you the story before, but
I'm sure the listeners haven't.
Yeah. I was once playing in a campaign. This was 1993, 94. I was just out of high school. And I was playing with some friends of mine, and it was a bad campaign. I'll say that right now. Nothing was going right. My friend Ted was running it, and the other players consisted of his roommate, who was a very dear friend of mine. I loved him to pieces.
This sounds familiar, Jesse.
But he drove me mad. For a very different reason. In that he just wasn't all there. Not the brightest fellow.
I see.
Another player in the campaign was our friend John, who was playing a paladin whose only known personality trait was that he was stupidly brave. This is John's description. And the third player once spent an entire session with an X-Acto knife and a GW Pegasus miniatures wing, just scraping all the paint off of it. That was all he did for an entire 3-hour session of D&D. And we would turn to him and say, "So, what do you do?" And he's just really, and go back to scraping. So we really had no idea what his deal was. And I was there playing my character, who I was very proud of when I rolled him up. He was a chaotic neutral, half-elven thief mage, which I chose particularly because I felt it would be a challenging combination to play. And I had this whole backstory about how he was, orphaned as a child and raised as a street urchin and a local mage. Well, yeah. Next Rage is right. Stupidly brave is one of the... it's pretty much the default setting for paladins, but...
Yeah, especially, second edition paladins, yeah.
But, there are nuances available to you. And John made it pretty clear that he didn't care about any of those nuances. He just wanted to be stupid and brave.
Well, there we go. But at least he had an angle in the character.
Yeah, John is the only person I know who's ever been arrested for a major felony.
Oh, dear. So, I know the story too, but
that is a different story, and we won't get into it just now.
Yeah.
And actually, no, I think he probably isn't the only person I know, but he was the first person I knew who ever got arrested for a felony.
Ah.
And he got out of it. Community service, the fucker. So, are we working blue on this podcast?
We're fine.
Okay. I've now completely lost my thread. Right.
Yes.
Challenging character combo. I've been adopted by, a wizard who saw the potential in him because of his elven blood to become a wizard as well. So, it's sort of like, that whole thing. Well, if I'd thought to ask before swearing, I probably wouldn't have said it.
God love the listeners. At any rate.
So I had this whole backstory. It was all very cool. And then I ran up against these three idiots who...
Well, we had Stupidly Brave,
totally inattentive, and just plain stupid.
Right.
So I was like, okay, this campaign is clearly doomed. How can I get out of it? Because unfortunately the DM was, a childhood friend of mine. And yes, lawful stupid. And so, he had been very, excited about the prospect of running a campaign again after several years off. So I'm like, okay, I want to leave this campaign. I don't want to tell my friend, your campaign sucks. You need to find better players or do something. So how can I get out of this? So I came up with a cunning plan, which was that I would get my character killed off.
Oh dear. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Stream just went down. And looks like we're back up.
Okay, we're back up. So I wanted out of this campaign.
Yep. But you didn't want to insult your childhood friend.
I did not want to insult my childhood friend by saying, oh, what a terrible campaign you're running. So I decided to get my character killed off. I thought, this should be stupidly easy. I am a second-level thief, first-level mage. I have all of 5 hit points to my name.
What are the odds of you actually surviving this?
I can't wear any armor. Clearly, if I'm looking to get killed, I will get killed.
Clearly, there's no way you could survive that if you're trying to die.
Right, and we were playing, a fairly straightforward dungeon crawling type campaign.
Right.
With a guy, with a DM who had a history of claiming to be a killer DM. So I'm like, okay, there's clearly no way this plan can fail.
Right.
So we get to this, we get to the next dungeon, and we walk into the entrance, and everybody's sort of looking around, trying to make their plans. I turn to the DM and I say, I drop my backpack. Yes, it failed beautifully, but we'll get to that. Drop my backpack, and I run screaming down the hall ahead of the rest of the party. And he says, okay, as you get about halfway down the hall, the entire area around you is plunged into darkness. Even though you're a half-elf and you have infravision, you can't see a thing. What do you do? I said, I run even faster. And he says, okay, you get to the end of the hall, which is a T intersection, you slam headfirst into the wall and fall on your butt. And I'm like, okay, I get up and I start running again. He's like, do you go right or left? I say, straight ahead.
Oh dear.
He's like, there's a wall there. And I'm like, well, I took a point of damage the first time I ran into it. I'll just keep this up. But, he refused to allow me to kill myself that way. The rest of the party eventually, advanced through the T intersection as I was, pointlessly banging my head against the wall. They decided to turn left. And eventually, I heard sounds of combat coming from the hallway to the left. I'm like, aha! This is a way to get killed. So I charged off screaming down the hallway to the left and found my boon companions engaged in a fight with a giant skeleton with flaming eyes. I'm like, aha. That is Nirvana right there ahead of me. That is certain death. I have a half-elf thief mage with now 4 hit points. That thing is going to eat me alive.
Yes, that is your campaign ejector seat right there.
Right. So I charge headlong into melee combat with the 10-foot tall skeleton with glowing eyes. He's like, okay, so you attack with your dagger? And I'm like, nope. Hand-to-hand. I'm going to subdue this fucker. And like, okay, you realize that you're going to get in the way of your friends who are attacking with hammers and stuff. I'm like, I don't care about that. I climb its rib cage and I attempt to rip its head off with my bare hands. So, eventually the paladin puts the skeleton down and I manage to take no damage out of this. I'm like, well, where's the fun in that? But, adventure continues. In another room, we find, strange fungi growing on the floor. So I say, I definitely eat that shit. He's like, okay, you start to see, strange visions and everything turns funny colors. I'm like, well. So I'm like, poison? He's like, no, just, well, I'll get to that. So, things continue. Eventually, the rest of the party, concerned by my bizarre behavior, took all my weapons away from me. And, started making sure that I didn't get myself killed, which was inconvenient from my perspective. So, later on, we found an underground river, and we're crossing it on, the handy boat that was pulled up against the shore. And one of the party members, the halfling thief, was lying in the bottom of the boat, injured. We were hoping that he would survive. And somehow or another, I got my hands on a wand that we found. And I'm like, so Ted, can I tell what this wand does? He's like, no, but you can see there's a command word, inscribed on it, on the haft. I'm like, okay. I pointed at the halfling. And I tried the command word. Hey, for all I know, it could heal him. And the rest of the party tackled me before the wand of magic missiles can kill a party member.
Right.
So, this continued for like another half hour. And eventually, I started having enough fun that I got back into the campaign and started actually playing for real. And they gave me my equipment back, and things were much more successful. Right. From that on, and I showed up next week and the week after that, and we played several more sessions, and eventually somebody else dropped out, and the campaign died.
Naturally.
But it was great fun while it lasted.
Right.
And later on, I was discussing with my friend Ted, and I'm like, so, what were you thinking when I charged pell-mell down the hallway into the darkness and slammed headfirst into the wall? He's like, oh, I thought that was great role-playing. Your character is chaotic neutral. It says right here in the player's handbook that, that lunatics are chaotic neutral. So you're doing a great job rolling your alignment there. So that's one way to enliven a boring dungeon crawl.
This is true. Try and get yourself killed.
Yeah.
Oh, dear Lord. Yeah, as I said, I've primarily been a DM, so I haven't actually, next grade, we know that's not how chaotic neutral works. Believe us, we know.
I've been waxed quite vocal about that is not how chaotic neutral works.
And we'll save that for another time, I think.
Sure.
We'll do an alignment episode at some point. Hell, that might be next week's topic.
I think it just might be. Funny how that works.
Astonishing. Excellent. At any rate, so I've not had a lot of opportunities to be a player in Dungeon Crawls, and I've not run a ton of them. I have run some. Usually because they are, when I've been lazy and like, oh god, I don't have time to write an adventure. What prepared modules do I have so I can save myself time?
They're definitely good for that.
Oh, they were excellent for that.
Well, I'm in the same boat, not having been in very many, because as we were saying, discussing before we started streaming, we've actually both managed to miss out on a lot of the classic modules.
Right, because both of us have. When I DM'd, I was given a copy of the basic set of Dungeons and Dragons, the Red Box,
right,
which came with the Keep on the Borderlands.
Right.
And my little 8-year-old brain read it and said, "Where is story? Don't see story. Meh, make up my own story."
Right.
Now, I'm sure it wasn't as good an actual adventure as the Keep on the Borderlands was, but so I got into writing my own thing very early on.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, I mean, I've been in 7 or 8 different gaming groups over the years, and in all of them, whoever was the GM was the kind of GM who wanted to homebrew stuff.
Right.
And so that's just been my experience for most of my gaming life.
Right. So this D&D thing we're doing right now is one of those times where we're like, wow, we're actually doing a dungeon crawl.
Yeah.
How odd.
And Peter's spoiling it by introducing plot and stuff.
I know it's almost criminal in some ways. Of course,
Peter, other Peter.
Yeah, that's our DM is also named Peter because it's not nearly confusing enough.
Well, at least we didn't invite any of the other Peters to play with us.
Yeah, well, there was that one time when it was like five Peters hanging out at the game store.
Yeah, and I think 3 of them were in one campaign.
Yes.
It was you, Peter Shaw, Peter Mellinger.
Yep. Yeah, Peter Vagelos and Peter Underwood were not.
No, and Peter DeGlopper.
I forgot about the DeGlopper. That's 6.
That's 6 Peters.
Dear Lord.
Who might all be in the same room at any given time.
There was a period of time where you could walk into the gaming room of your room of games and say, "Hey, Peter," and you basically have good odds of getting at least being one of the people in the room being the person you want to talk to.
Yep. And if not, you can just talk to him anyway.
Yep. Peter was a very common name at one point in North America, but at any rate, so we actually did play another dungeon crawl a few years back, Jesse.
Yeah, we did the Temple of Elemental Evil.
The Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil for 3rd edition.
Right, the 3rd edition one.
Yes.
It's funny because you guys mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. I had completely forgotten about that campaign.
Well, there's a good reason for that.
No, I mean, people were telling me stories like my legendary antics, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that.
Yeah, well, it was a while ago, and as I said, the campaign itself was somewhat not memorable.
Yeah, well, I did remember all the Masterwork Bastard swords.
Oh my God, there were that was their best source of money in that game. Every goddamn monster had a Masterwork Bastard sword.
Sometimes two.
Oy. But yeah, it was trying to sort of be a classic dungeon crawl, except that it basically wasn't. Oh, here's the thing: the original Temple of Elemental Evil, when it was published for 1st edition AD&D.
Yep.
AD&D is not a well-designed RPG game, especially by modern standards.
Well, no, I mean they were making it up as they went along.
Right. It's perfectly reasonable if not. And given what they were working with at the time, I'm actually impressed. I'm massively impressed. I couldn't do that.
We're making this up as we go along. It's not nearly as good as AD&D.
Oh, hell no. At any rate, but the first Temple of Elemental Evil is Peter Shaw, my friend, our mutual friend Peter Shaw, describes it as quite possibly one of the most technically well-balanced dungeons ever. Because you walk in at level 1, you walk out at level 7, and it is this linear, perfectly structured, equally challenging event throughout the whole thing. Basically, as you go deeper in the dungeon, you're just continually challenged just the right amount to make it challenging and interesting without just killing you.
Yep.
And that's a testament to the amount of work that went into that module.
Yeah, and that was sort of I think that was from the golden age of D&D adventure design. Yeah. Because they had so much experience designing and running convention games. Their sort of core authors group were extremely skilled at designing well-balanced encounters.
Right. And yes, Max, right. That is entirely why they made an entire video game based on it. That and nostalgia.
Yeah.
I shall also play that at some point, despite that it's supposedly bug-tastic.
I'll pass.
Yeah.
I played Eye of the Beholder. I'm done with the D&D computer games.
Yeah, fair enough. At any rate, but when Third Edition came out, they decided that they wanted to hook onto some of that nostalgia from way back when. So they, the lead designer of Third Edition, Monty Cook, decided I'm going to make the Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yep. And
honestly, the very beginning it was pretty good. The bit where we're in Hamlet, we go investigate this the boathouse and the rooms of the temple. That was pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, like everything outside of the Temple of Elemental Evil was actually pretty awesome.
So we did that, and that was pretty cool. And then we found out that there was a new temple being built way up somewhere else, and we were going to have to go deal with it. And it was exactly like, the previous temple, that it was in that difficulty fluctuated wildly. We had no idea how to what to expect in terms of difficulty anywhere we went, and we got our ass kicked constantly in weird sort of ways.
If you went left instead of right, you would go from the level 1 area to the level 2 area to the level 7 area. Right,
and there was no delineation that basically tipped you off.
Yep.
Because we went from fighting stuff we could handle to a fairly tough fight against some four-end ape thing.
Yep.
To Green Dragon.
Right.
Wait, what?
I think that was after I dropped out of the game.
Oh, that might have been actually, yes. And we found no magical equipment anywhere in the module. In fact, our DM had to run a separate side adventure between sessions. Between sort of runs in the dungeon to somewhere else so we could actually get some magical equipment, because the town we were operating out of didn't sell any either. Not that we had enough money.
Where did I get the Cloak of the Spider?
That was one of the few items we found.
Yep.
We didn't find any magic weapons or magic armor. We found a couple of incidental items.
Yeah, that was the big thing. We had no +1s.
Yeah, none. We had masterwork bastard swords. That we had.
Which were +1, except when you needed them to be.
Yeah, but the Cloak of Spider did give us that wonderful moment of you standing on the ceiling with your halberd.
Yep.
Whacking down on top of the monsters.
Top stabbing.
That's right. Because you had a level. You had a level of rogue.
Yep.
I forgot that, so you could actually backstab.
That was in fact the entire plan.
So yeah, that was it's oh god, for a module that had a lot of potential, it really failed.
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to go wrong with something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing is dungeon crawls can be actually a lot of fun, but you really do have to be careful about making sure that, especially since it's pretty much a gamist idea.
Well, and it's the one time where being on rails is not a bad thing.
Right. Exactly.
Because there isn't, there aren't a lot of choices to be made.
Right.
So any choice that you do make is one that's going to get you killed. Like, for instance, if you're in a valley with several different cave openings, and the first two lead to orcs and kobolds, and the third one leads to bugbears, and there's nothing telling you that it leads to bugbears, you might get your half-elf fighter thief killed. Or fighter mage killed.
Yes.
Just, to choose a random example.
It's a totally random example. Has nothing to do with the fact that's what happened to us recently.
It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm playing a human fighter now.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, Jesse, I think we probably could have pulled that off had I not been knocked unconscious in the previous fight.
Yes, that was awkward.
Being the party tank and primary healer at that point.
Well, we did have Luke for healing at that point.
Actually, he was a better healer than I am because he does have higher wisdom.
Yes.
As an aside, this game is we're going really old school in this game. We originally rolled our stats 3 dice 6 straight down, no reordering.
And that was very, very unhelpful.
Peter was very nice and gave us the ability to swap a 13 for one of our stats. And
it was even nicer to come up with a new character design system
that
for future characters.
That does not suck wildly.
Yes.
He allowed me to re-roll my first character. I was that pathetic.
So was I, actually.
Yeah.
My second character was a whole bunch of 13s and 14s.
Yep.
All of his stats were either 13 or 14. Oh, and he had a 10 in Constitution. So, good enough to be able to play several different types of characters, but not good enough to actually be good at anything.
And that is the flaw with rolling through Dice 6 straight down, is odds are you won't be good at anything.
Yep.
Joey and our friends Joey and Kyle lucked into actually good characters.
Yes.
Because Kyle got a good dex and a good charisma, so he was able to make a pretty decent thief. And Joey got a 16 in intelligence, which meant, look, it's a wizard.
It has been decreed. Thou shalt play the wizard.
Yep. Whereas I ended up with a bunch of smattering of stats and a 13 and a 15 in Constitution.
Yep.
Which was like, well, I can play almost anything. I guess I should play something somewhat tanky. So I ended up playing a Dwarven Fighter Cleric.
And I looked at my stats and said, wow, this doesn't say anything to me, so I will default to Elven Fighter Mage.
Yep. And that worked okay for a little while until you got killed.
Yes.
At any rate, so yeah, we've been talking about these dungeon crawls for a while. Let's see. I guess we should probably touch a little bit more on the history of dungeon crawls, perhaps. Is there anything else we want to talk about there?
Well, only that, rumor has it, I admit I am no gaming historian, but the very first session ever played of what we now think of as a tabletop role-playing game was, a bunch of guys exploring a dungeon.
Yep.
Because that was what the terrain feature on their, tabletop war game was.
Dungeon crawling. Actually, questions are. We've got about 15 minutes left before we're gonna wrap up. I think we're gonna.
Yeah.
We're only gonna do an hour this week. We may go a little bit longer next week, but we want to. Well, for starters, the New England Patriots are playing football at 8:30, and we're both Patriots fans, so we're gonna want to wrap up at 8 anyways.
Yep. Okay, so next raid. I have a question in case of dungeon crawling. How rests are handled? That is a very important question, and the answer is.
It's going to vary by DM.
It's going to vary by DM and by party, because, as we mentioned before, we have one party member who is hyper-cautious and insists on backing out of the dungeon to rest at every opportunity. Which, is great, except that we're also tracking things like food and encumbrance. And so every time he makes us leave the dungeon for 8 hours, we lose a day's worth of endurance, and since the dungeon that we're exploring is a 4-day trip away from town, it makes the logistics very difficult.
Yep. Which was the crux of my argument the last time we actually debated this.
Yes. But the way we've been handling rest in this particular dungeon is that, we've basically, whenever possible, we found a place within the dungeon itself that we could barricade. The room with the 2 secret doors was extremely helpful.
That was awesome. that room was the best.
And continues to be the best since we cleared out that part of the dungeon and nobody has moved in.
So yes, hopefully we'll be able to head back there and room up there in future. Secret doors.
Yes.
Yeah, it was kind of like a safe room in Left 4 Dead.
It is, in fact, a room with 2 secret doors, one on each side. So you find the first secret door, you get into the room, and you can see the other secret door because it's not secret from that side, and you're like, aha! This place is perfectly safe, as long as we kill everybody who knows about both of these doors.
Which we did, and it was good.
Which we did, and it was all good.
There was even food in that room, if I remember correctly. I mean, it was orc food, but...
Well, there was a little bit, but what we actually found a storeroom.
That's right.
Looted caravan supplies, and we moved them into the secret room to act as our fallback position.
Yep.
But the only other real option is is to pull out of the dungeon entirely, and as we mentioned, that's no, it's like haunches of meat that the orcs had killed and more or less roasted was what we mean by orc food, not dead orcs. Yee.
Yeah.
I was playing an elf. Elves don't eat orcs. That's the rule.
Yeah. No, the long yeah. So, anyways, that's we basically have to pull out, and that has the aforementioned
logistical drawbacks.
Yep. And honestly, in a lot of dungeons, there are like the classic sorry, yes. Oh, my stream is going.
Have you dropped again?
I'm here still, in theory. Here I am.
Yeah, you're.
And we're back.
Okay. Now we're back.
We're back. Sorry about that, guys. My internet is being a little bit derpy today. It happens.
Yep.
At any rate, so yeah, I like the classic dungeons. Again, back to Temple of Elemental Evil. There are several rooms within the dungeon which were planned out, which are planned areas where you can hole up and rest.
Yep.
So from the DM seat, you really want to be able to set up at various points in the dungeon places where the players can basically find somewhere they can barricade themselves in and rest in the dungeon, so they don't have to pull all the way out and find somewhere to rest safely.
Or you have to design the dungeon in bite-sized chunks.
Right.
Which, can be hard to do. So, and you don't want to have, like, the Diablo thing where the entrance to the dungeon is literally 10 feet outside the walls of the town.
That could be awkward. And we'll sprain the brain of any narrativist or pretty much simulationist at that point.
Yeah, that's your suspension of disbelief shot right there.
Right.
So I remember there was another question. Oh yeah, world's largest dungeon. I've never played it.
Me neither. I thought about buying a copy of it at one point, but I never got around to doing it.
I think there was like a copy of it at Your Move Games when we used to hang out there. And periodically, people would just sort of walk up and look at it and think, yeah, we should buy this and run it. And think to themselves, do I really want to run 100 levels?
Do I really want to run the world's largest dungeon?
Yeah.
There is... I mean, it's a dungeon, I believe that is structure takes you from level 1 to level 20.
Yeah. And, at a certain point you think to yourself, no, I'd really rather just make stuff up.
Yeah. That's sort of been my position. I look at it and I go, I could run this.
Yeah, but it's sort of like a flight simulator. I mean, yes, I could, learn how to fly a plane and, fly in realistic conditions, or I could play X-Wing versus TIE Fighter.
One of these is more akin to a video game, and the other is flight simulator.
Yep. And, the world's largest dungeon, it's one of those things which sounds like fun in theory, but then when you think about it, actually doing it, it's like, well, that's an awful lot of time to invest.
Okay, that's every single monster in the Monster Manual. That's impressive.
Yes, that was part of its selling point.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, if you want to do that, why don't you just start with the Monster Manual and go page by page? Apart from the fact that, dragons actually come fairly early on in the alphabetical list.
Which would be kind of a nasty surprise.
And all of your players will die.
Alright, we're level 7, and why are we fighting a Draco Lich?
Yeah. Ooh, wait, no, Type 6 Demon comes before that even.
Oh yeah! Baylor. You're
Archons.
Oh, Archon. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, your level 1... the level 1 party's gonna have a lot of fun up against the Archon.
Yep. Ooh, Aboleths, yeah.
Oh, well, it'll spawn a very interesting campaign as the Aboleths take over your minds at level 1. And all of a sudden you're working for the Aboleths. So, I guess it's an interesting campaign concept. I wouldn't want to play it. But,
Yeah.
I guess if you want to play an evil campaign, there you go. Even then, I'm not sure I want to work for the Aboleths.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for, like, a post-apocalyptic, rise up against the Obelisk campaign, I guess.
Sure, and sort of similar to the Drow 1 campaign I've run a couple of times. I've been running off and on.
Yeah, that's a good one. Or well, I guess basically Dark Sun.
Yeah, that's even more that's even more post-apocalyptic than either of those.
Yep.
I mean that's hard. That's like beyond Mad Max.
Beyond Thunderdome. We don't need another hero. We don't need another half giant.
Oh dear. So yeah, does anyone else have any questions they want to ask? Since we got people in the chat and we got 10 minutes.
Echo 9.
Yeah.
Also, I need dinner. I need to eat food.
Yes. So as I said, we'll wrap up shortly. But anyways, does anyone have any questions? Or should Jesse
check my Twitter stream and see if anybody tweeted something amusing in the last hour.
Cool. Go for it.
I didn't actually ask for questions, so there probably won't be anything related to our topic.
Almost certainly not.
Nope.
Actually, that reminds me. You can find both of us on Twitter. My handle is MechaGM, shockingly, and Jesse's is Highlander, which is actually in the title card there.
Yep. Oh, well, I'll answer the question now because somebody's bound to ask eventually. Highlander is the name of my human second edition AD&D invoker from sophomore year in high school. When I was signing up for my very first email account in the early 90s, I was trying to think of a name. I didn't want to go with any of the variations on J. Thomas because, for God's sake, there's too many of us. So I chose to go with Highlander, and that has been my name online ever since, for going on 2 decades now. Another question from X-Rage. Do you prefer classless system or system based on classes? I prefer classless systems. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I am a hero system guy, which is your basic points-based skills and powers, design your own abilities system. That's always been my preference. Even when I'm playing D&D, I tend to go for the ways to stretch the basic class dichotomies. As you mentioned, as you probably have noticed, I play multi-class characters a lot. I played a thief mage, and I played a fighter mage, and I've played a fighter rogue, and all that stuff. I don't like the idea of being locked in to a particular class. I think that there is something to be said for that class, for the class-based design mechanic. I think it works really well in games like Earth Dawn, where there's there's an in-game story-driven reason why people have these classes, and they're enough of them, and they're broadly defined enough that you can do a lot of interesting character concepts, and they tend to reinforce the aspects of the setting which are most interesting, like Sky Pirates. It's a class, and as soon as you have Sky Pirate in your party, you're like, well, now we're going to have airboats and stuff. It'll be great.
Yep.
But the basic, I'm a fighter, I'm a cleric, I'm a mage, I'm a rogue, that gets old very quickly.
Yeah, I'm actually based in the same boat, Jesse. I actually do prefer classless systems. I like point-buy systems just for the simple fact that I can completely design what the character I want to play is from the ground up.
Yeah.
I like being able to do that. However, I am also a bit more of a gamist than Jesse is, and I do have a soft spot in my heart for well-designed class-based systems.
Yeah.
Especially if the classes are fairly well balanced against each other, which is why I like 4th edition D&D.
Yeah.
That said, I do massively prefer point-buy systems.
Yep. And I was really into AD&D 3rd edition when it first was introduced, because it seemed like a way to get sort of that free-form character design element that was missing out of previous editions of AD&D.
And then it fell down in so many other areas.
Yeah. And then it fell over, burned down, sank into the swamp.
Yeah. It had serious balance issues, is what it boiled down to.
Yeah, but my other favorite game systems are Feng Shui, which is kind of sort of a class-based system. I mean, there are predefined archetypes that you can customize, but a lot of the basic design decisions are made for you for those character types. But there's a lot of them. I mean,
a lot.
40 or 50 by the time you get into even the first couple of supplements.
Yep.
And they offer an awful lot of room for customization even within those predefined boundaries. And Amber, the Diceless role-playing game, which goes completely the other direction.
That is an understatement.
Where you can pretty much play anything from any time, anywhere, and the mechanics of the system are simple enough that you can pretty much just, buy one or two abilities and run with them.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm definitely not a class and level based guy.
Yeah, as I said, I'm generally in the same boat, but I do have a soft spot for well balanced ones.
Well, that feeds into my simulationist tendency. Like the reason that I like Earthdawn is because the classes are designed to define the setting for you. And so, I mean, there's definitely room for it. But, it's, for so long it was simply the default answer, and nobody could think of anything else.
Yeah. There were a couple of exceptions really early on, but I guess we can go into that some other time. I mean, things like Traveler, when it first came out, didn't really have classes.
Yeah.
And that's really old. Or the James Bond 007 RPG.
Ooh, there we go.
That
is a game which I still want to play. I've never actually gotten to play it. I've ran a bunch of characters.
Yep. Someday we'll run it, I think. But I've tried running it. It's a little bit harder to run than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it seems like it's still pretty old school.
Well, there's that, and it's hard to run an espionage style game, actually.
Oh, it is. Believe me, I've tried.
All right. Well, it's just about 8 o'clock. We only got a few minutes left, so I think we'll wrap up here. So as I said, this is the first episode of Surly Grognards. Hopefully we'll improve in future, although it's very likely we'll probably be winging it about as much as we did this week. Next week we'll be talking about, what was that we're talking about? Alignments, that's it.
Alignments.
Yes.
Sure, why not?
Oh boy, that should be fun. So to wrap it up, thanks for watching. I'll be posting this on my Blip account, recording this at some point in the near future.
I will be doing nothing at all helpful.
So yes, but you can send us questions at either of our Twitter accounts. As I mentioned, mine's at MechaGM, and Jesse's at Highlander. As I said, they're right there in the title card. So there's that, or you can find my blog at mechagm.blogspot.com. Jesse, you want to pick your blog?
No, that would involve me updating it.
Fair enough. But yeah, so I guess Twitter's the best way to get questions to Jesse. Twitter or either that or post comments in my blog. I'm going to try to update at least once a week. I'm new to this blogging thing myself, but need something to do. So yeah, those places you can reach us. You can also find me on the screen on the IRC over at lordcat.com every now and then, fairly often, because I've got a lot of time to waste while I'm hunting for a new job. Anything else, Jesse?
Go Pats.
Go Pats. All right, thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you all later. Take care.
Good night.